Think back, March 2020. The world was a vastly different place. Everyone seemed to get sun, people drove to work. Fuck you, asshole! Movie theaters were packed, and the world wasn't a big cesspool of divided hatred. Then, all of a sudden, a pandemic was announced due to a virus that shall remain nameless. And the film world, along with the rest of the world, as we knew it, was doomed. The world has somewhat returned to normal, but the one thing that still stands, people are still wearing, yes, masks. So join Cinema Gulp in an adventure honoring the 2 years of wearing face masks as we discuss our favorite movie masks of all time. Because let's face it,
we all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
Welcome to Best of Cinema Masks. I'm Ben.
And I'm John.
And we have one of our greatest guests of all time back in the chair. Captain Cockney Spock is back with us again.
Good day to you, good sirs.
Which is fine. I gotta wear my glasses. Dude, have you ever tried wearing glasses with a mask on? Woo. It's fucking impossible. John, take it away.
Quick honorable mentions. First one is one of Ben's favorite movies by one of his favorite directors. We got the ex-presidents from Point Break. They're just the most iconic bank robber masks of all time, in my opinion.
I think so. Yeah.
I think being a child of the 70s and 80s, we grew up with this idea that our president was a good guy. Well, except for Nixon. But, we grew up with that expectation. So it was a really nice twist to see all of our ex-presidents as these bank robbers holding shotguns. Gotta go with my rich Uncle Tony. That's Tony Stark, Iron Man. A very cool look, and the MCU's success has basically given him a new life and popularity. Just like one of the most recognizable masks now, even though it wasn't before the movies. And so it's not so much how it looks though, it's the function of the mask. The tech that he has in there, the heads-up display is just so awesome and entertaining. So it's just a really cool, sweet mask.
And I always think that the mask from the original movie has always been my favorite. Like the whole suit from the original has been my favorite. It's gone through like a million iterations.
Okay, so here it is, my number 5, Rorschach from Watchmen. Definitely one of the most unique ideas ever for a mask, in my opinion.
Me too.
I feel like it's totally creative from the comic book idea, but it gets so much cooler when it's presented in live action. Yeah, I find it hypnotic and fascinating and intimidating and frightening all at the same time.
And I agree with you that like when you watch it on screen, the way it moves around, like you can't see that on the panel,
Yeah.
I see a pretty flower.
Well, that was my number 5. That one is the most unique of the list, I'd say.
Number 5 for Cap.
Number 5 for me is not Darth Vader, but it is from the Star Wars saga, from the original trilogy, the only good one, Empire Strikes Back. But the one I've chosen is actually Boba Fett as my mask, because in Empire Strikes Back, he had 5 lines of dialogue. So it was mask, posture, arguing with Vader, the implication of a previous disintegration.
No disintegration.
They did so much with so little, and now what? He's crawled out the Sarlacc. He's got a pot belly. He's chilling out. He's living at Boba Fett's palate. He is Boba Fett. He's getting bigger than Jabba. What the hell's going on? He's going to get stuck in that place if he's not careful. I mean, it's nice to have a Kiwi playing Boba Fett, but of course, shouts out Temuera Morrison, Kia order. But keep the mask on. It doesn't work. It's a perfect example of a character with a mask that works because of the mask. And there's been more than one actor underneath. Jeremy Bullock played him originally in The Empire Strikes Back, and then he got his face on screen by also playing the Imperial officer that was holding Princess Leia. Look, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
I'm Boba Fett as well. Hi, everyone.
Really?
So he also got his face on the screen.
That's cool.
Something that Anthony Daniels couldn't do till episode 2. But overall, Boba Fett works best when you don't know who it is behind the mask.
I agree completely.
He's worth a lot more to me alive.
Okay, coming in at number 5 for me is Immortan Joe from Mad Max Fury Road. Indian actor Hugh Keys-Byrne, the villain from the original Mad Max, plays Immortan Joe, obviously much older now. A way scarier bad guy in every sense of the word, but very over the top, yes. But in this ultra amplified version of the world that George Miller created for Fury Road, it makes complete sense. Why does he wear the mask? Even though it's aesthetically pleasing, it's really badass to look at. Well, apparently, he has a respiratory problem, but because he's so high up in the ranks and he's kind of he's like a master. He's kind of in charge of pretty much everything that we see in the world. Obviously, it's a small pocket of, I'm guessing, still Australia. He breathes clean air through that respiratory mask, and that's why he's wearing it. It's not just intimidation, though. I fucking love the way it looks, but I just love how it resembles a skeleton jaw that's kind of almost something from Hellraiser. And I guess the way that the things come out of the shoulders and stuff like that helps him breathe a little bit better. Tell you guys right off the bat, it might be the coolest looking mask on my list. Obviously not the most practical, but Fury Road's not exactly practical. It's just over the top and crazy with lovely oranges, and this mask just merges beautifully into that movie to make a really scary, intimidating villain who's really vulnerable and gross and kind of a pussy in the end, So Immortan Joe's mask, number 5 for me. Moving on to number 4.
Nice.
All right, this one is a combo of nostalgia and iconography. You're all gonna recognize Mr. Darth Vader.
Hey.
All right. Can't breathe in this fucking thing.
Oh god! Imagine if you had the dark helmet. Dark helmet was your favorite mask.
Well, this did inspire one of the other most iconic masks, Dark Helmet, and they say parody is one of the highest forms of praise. So, we all love this as kind of one of our first villains that we all got introduced, cinematic villains, like the first all-powerful guy with a face that gives you nightmares. And it's just such a cool, sleek, sinister look. It's mysterious. You didn't really know if he was a robot or a man.
You're the man now, dog.
Kind of looks like a futuristic samurai. Just so
yeah.
It's number 4 on my list because nostalgia, and it's just one of the most iconic masks ever.
Moving on to number 4 for Cap.
Yeah, it would have been Vader, but now this allows room for V, one of my favorites. Because I often talk about transmedia canonical verisimilitude, so I should stick to the movie, but it happens that I was reading V for Vendetta back in 81, 82, when it was a monthly strip in Warrior magazine, so it was quite an influence early on. I had no clue that within the story, the mask would become such a feature, and then in the real world, from freedom fighters to anonymous online, it has become a symbol for more than one real group. In fact, my son, when I showed him this, he goes, "Oh, what, are you in Anonymous, Dad?" I was like, well, no, it's from V from Vendetta. So it's become, it now means more than one thing. So I think it's become more popular, more, not quite ubiquitous, but more popular in the real world than probably even Alan Moore imagined when he was having it designed for his original comic strip back in the early 80s.
Definitely one of my favorite things that Alan Moore ever created, for sure. Like, it's so thought-provoking, and a lot of people reduce it down to a post-apocalyptic dark Zorro sort of, and it's like, that's fair, I guess, because of the certain things, but I love that movie.
Thought about, with the V instead of the Z. Have you made that?
Good choice, man. Good choice.
Like,
great. Shout out David Lloyd, the original artist on V for Vendetta, who would have been the guy.
I've never spent any time with the comic book per se, but the movie itself, reminded me of an action version of 1984 to some degree.
Change of pace here. Moving on to number 4 for myself. It's the creepy old lady face mask from Mrs. Doubtfire. But I have a good argument for this. It works as the comedy, which the movie is, but it also works in a horror situation, which many editors like myself have made rehashes of the trailer and turned it into quite the horror movie, and it works just as well. But I really love I was a teenager when this movie came out, so I wasn't a kid. I wasn't the key demographic, but I love the detail that goes into the creation of the mask scene. It's interesting. It gives you like a good sense of how face molds are made and then changed. And it's a funny scene with Harvey Fierstein, not to be confused with the other Harvey something Steen.
Matchmaker, make me a match.
But when the mask is flattened by the truck in the alley, it's the scariest fucking thing I ever saw when I was a kid. Like when he looks down, he's like, oh, and he puts the whipped cream on his face. But I like to watch Mrs. Doubtfire because it's endearing and it's a fun Christopher Columbus movie. But sometimes this flick of a switch goes off in my head where it goes in the other direction and I start paying attention to like the sheer creepiness of certain things, especially as you get older and you look at 80s and 90s properties and you're like, wow, that was fucked up. But just knowing that Daniel's underneath the mask acting as someone else while he's having conversations with his ex-wife, it's fucking creepy. All in all, like just a great cinema mask, and it really works with, I mean, Robin Williams was such a personality, so it works with him, and it's one that'll certainly be remembered, that mask, for good or the bad. So number 4 for me is the Mrs. Doubtfire creepy lady mask. Okay, moving on to number 3, John.
Number 3 for me, as you can see, the Predator. Bad ass. That's the first thing you got to say about the Predator mask. Just such a fucking awesome look, cool design for an alien hunter. This awesome freaking armor right here has more than just good looks. It's got brains. It's filled with all kinds of awesome tech. This is like the original Iron Man mask, basically. It's got laser sights and heat vision, audio visual readouts, and microwave ovens and cable TV. It's freaking awesome. Got one right here.
Is that the one that Josh wore while beer bonging?
Smells like Pabst Blue Ribbon. Love the Predator mask. The original is always my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of some of the later iterations of it. It seemed to always get bigger and more extravagant. It started to look a little ridiculous. The original is the best. Part 2's got some good looking ones too, but a lot of the other movies, it got a little bit ridiculous. But such a fan of Predator just in general, the alien, the movie, everything about it, even the look of the creature underneath the mask. So it's kind of this awesome thing that saves that till the right moment in the film. Like you get so many cool looks at the Predator. They utilize it perfectly where you don't see him for so much of the film. That when they start to show him, he has a certain look that's awesome and intimidating, but it's saving the best for last when you finally get to see what's underneath the mask too. So Predator is number 3 for me.
Okay, number 3. I do not have the mask, but the collection of the comics, which I just rebought. So I haven't actually read this in years. I look forward to getting back into it. I actually could have picked almost any superhero, but specifically Moon Knight, because he's got a total of 4 identities, really pushing that schizo multi-personality aspect of superheroes. But still, the classic thing is his main superhero alter ego crime-fighting identity is Moon Knight amongst his 3 other characters or personalities.
Okay, guys, coming in at number 3 for me is the Reconstructive Surgery mask from one of my favorite movies of the early aughts, Vanilla Sky. And I love this movie. It's one of my favorite Cameron Crowe movies. It did not get received well as a Cameron Crowe movie, but it's creepy, yet it makes the movie funny at times. Cruise underneath this mask, his reactions to things, like they're super hilarious and over the top, which I love. Like, it's a fucking mask!
Because for a minute there, I thought we were talking about a fucking mask!
The context with the plot is supposed to be, it's like helping David's face, which is severely deformed, like sort of correct itself and keep out like nasty rays. And like, so he's a very vain, self-indulgent man. He's super successful, but it's his charm and his good looks when you watch the movie, the first act is so well done because it's all character development about how he's just outgoing, but it's all because people love him because he's charming and he's good looking. And when he loses that in this car accident from Cameron Diaz, all in the first act, you really get to a good sense of who he is. The second act is him wearing this mask, and it's only pretty much in the second act that you get it. But that's where you really get the best, like, Tom Cruise acting is underneath this mask. You know, there's something tragic, strange, mysterious about what exactly is going on underneath it. I think watching this movie, like, way back in my military days, the thing that always stuck with me about this movie was the second act with the mask. And every time people go Vanilla Sky, I always think of this kind of weirdly molded, like, Tom Cruise face mask thing. And he's intense and off character, and he's like sad, self-conscious, loud when he's wearing it. And I don't know. To me, it's a memorable mask because it changes the course of the movie and, like, signifies the entire second act. And it steals that. All his vanities are, like, coming into fruition so hard because he's like, fuck this mask, but also my face is deranged, so fuck that. Like, and he's yelling at doctors going, I'll pay you whatever you want. How could you not fix my face? And they're like, dude, your face is too fucked up. Like, so I love what the mask does for this movie. Moving on to number 2, John.
My number 2, as you can see here, is Jason Voorhees and the hockey mask.
Good one.
This one, I would say, even though I mentioned that Darth Vader is, you know, one of the original villains for a lot of us of our age group, and had a face that could induce nightmares, he didn't really give me nightmares, but Jason Voorhees did. Jason Voorhees had sleepless nights for me and my mom because I wanted to sleep in her bed after catching one of these on a, you know, Saturday afternoon. Even though it was an edited version of the movie, I still was scared as hell by seeing this freaking mask. It's simple, it's effective, and I feel like in a lot of the movies, it's actually, let's see, you can see me right here. Yeah. It looks more like this in a lot of the
movies. That's way too clean. There's no blood on it or guts.
Yeah, but like it's cool and effective right here. Like, that's creepy, right? The movies always, like, put him in a lot of bright light and just they don't shoot it effectively for a horror movie mask. Occasionally there's some good creepy shots. So I think, even though I love this and it's iconic and actually scary to me, or it was, you know, when I was young, it was more like scary to me seeing it in advertisements or just how it got into my psyche as a young kid and hearing kids on the playground talk about the movies or whatever. I was more scared of it just in my own brain than when I finally saw the movies. It was always just kind of like cheesy. He just wasn't very effective, because there's other more iconic mask killers out there that are shot in a very effective way. So, but still, it's my number 2 because there's so many movies. It's gone through some cool iterations. Part 7 is my favorite, when he's finally just he's lost a big chunk in the bottom here. He's got the iconic slash in the top there. And being a hockey fan, you know, one of my favorite sports, I always kind of love, one, just that this was what the mask that hockey players actually played in. It kind of amazes me that they took pucks to the face wearing this thing. Dude. But now the fact that it's more synonymous with Jason movies than it is the sport of hockey, I kind of love how that had turned out. Even, you know, I love hockey, but I love movies more. So it's kind of fun to know that this is now iconic in the world of movies more than the world of sports.
Number 2 for you, Cap.
Number 2 for me, 5 weeks, 3 hours, 4 minutes, 15. I've got the numbers wrong. Frank.
Nice, dude.
Frank the Rabbit from Donnie Darko.
Very creepy.
Director's cut, but the original works too. A key person in the entire story. Very visually stunning, and yet you can airbrush Frank in later. The fact that he's Frank the Rabbit is not directly relevant to the story, but in a way, it kind of it gives it that visual impact. Like, who the frick is this giant 6-foot blue Bugs Bunny on acid freak following me around?
That's what he looks like.
Yeah, and but then when he takes his mask off at the end, it's well, you could I'll save it, but you could argue it's a handsome face that's been uglified underneath the mask because of the events in Donnie Darko. It's so key. One of my favorite movies, and why it remains the example of how to score 1 out of 10 in Scotty R37's Guide to Movies. I'll never know. Scotty, watch it again. Come on, how dare you? It's got both of the Guyland Halls. It's fantastic. I totally recommend Donnie Darko. And it's really, and spare a thought for Frank. It's really all about Frank.
So moving on to my number 2, John, you beat me to the punch on this one, sir. It's the Predator mask. It's a combat mask. It's tactical. It's badass. It's clearly protective. I mean, that's the way it has all these functions to it, but it's ambiguous. And I don't really know why, because like when you're hunting prey, they don't see you coming, but you know, it goes with the species. And the thing I love, I'm not going to talk much about it because you already said everything about it, but the thing I disagree with you on is I don't really like the actual design of the Predator face. I'm always kind of bummed when they remove the mask, because then
really
this like dying crab, like it's like a crab dying, like I don't know. So I've never been huge on that. I love the functionality, the sleekness, and the coolness of the original Predator mask. I love it. That's my number 2. Okay, moving on to our number 1 favorite cinema mask. John, you are up, sir.
Number 1. Let's see if I can put a picture up of the number 1 mask in all of cinema history, because who wouldn't agree with Mr. Michael Myers right there? So yeah, we were talking about with the Jason mask. I don't own a Michael Myers mask. I have every single one of these other masks. I don't have a Michael Myers mask.
I remember when we did the Halloween thing, we turned my Charlie Sheen mask inside out, and you used that.
In that video. Yeah, I used to own one. I used to have, I don't know if you remember, Ben, I used to have one standing up in my upstairs window.
Yep.
I had a dummy with a Michael Myers mask that would always stand in my upstairs window looking out over the whole street. They don't really... The mask looks pretty badass in the newer ones, but they don't really shoot him in the right light to give him the right creep factor. But the original did it right. The original set the stage for what a masked killer should be in so many ways, and really how you should shoot those kind of horror movies. And not everybody followed suit. A lot of cheap filmmakers came along and just said, oh, it's all about a creepy mask, not so much how you shoot them. So a lot of this, maybe a lot of the credit belongs to Dean Cundey and Carpenter for this film, and how such a simple mask, a Star Trek, Captain Kirk, Spock, such a cool story, a little part of cinema history, like how this mask came to be. And it's just so cool. Like when you look at it, you can see the Captain Kirk in it, which it's like, how is that scary? But it is. It's the scariest mask in all of cinema. I do want to put up real quick, when you have a bad version of this mask, boy, is it fucking bad. Ones you can buy,
one of them looks like Data.
It can go from amazing to crap so easily with this mask, which is it's surprising how it's so effective when it could look like this on screen half the time.
Kid and Play and Data right there. Moving on to Captain Cockney Spock's number 1 cinema mask.
Okay, and before the number 1, my special shout out goes to also Tom Cruise. You mentioned him in a movie based on Open Your Eyes. Shout out to the mask in Eyes Wide Shut. It's not going to get a full vote because it's not a full mask. It's technically, I believe, called a domino mask if it's halfway. I believe that's the case, but quite iconic nonetheless.
Good one. Good mask.
And yeah. Some people might want to swap it because they might think this one's a bit of a technicality, but I had to pick, of course, Blade Runner. Is it the emotional mask that Rick Deckard wears when he goes to work every day? No, it is Blink and You'll Miss It. One of the additions, I believe, to the final cuts. It's a dancing girl, number 2 in hockey mask. I don't know if she's an erotic dancer or a replicant prostitute. Who knows at this point? Who cares? But the like we've got there, the contradistinction of a sensual, sexy body. It's worn with wearing of erotic clothing, designed to arouse the potential customer. But the ski mask, or indeed hockey mask, beg your pardon, the hockey mask works on so many layers. Is it for hockey? Are they going to be throwing hockey pucks at the erotic dancers? Oh, get off. No, of course they're not. So does it indeed reference your number 2 choice? So it's actually a cinematic reference to a horror mask, and that's almost Blade Runner summed up, if you're a hipster, in a nanosecond, where you've got a sexy dancer. Who is she? What is she? Is she human? Is she trying to arouse me or scare me? I don't know. Maybe in a way she summarizes all women. I don't know what I'm saying, but for something that's on screen for 5 seconds, it's left an indelible mark on the memory, and that's my number 1 spot.
So number 1 for me. This is a one that's near and dear to my heart. Way back in film school, Omnibaba. So Omnibaba is a Japanese erotic horror film made in 1964. This image has never fucking left my head since I was 27 years old in film school. It's made by Kanto Shindo. We had to watch this in the aesthetics of cinema, and it freaked me out on several reasons. So the film's just filled with like amazing visuals, imagery, camera work. It's fucking brutally violent, creepy as hell. So basically the mask is something that comes in the third act. So 2 women in the Japanese Civil War, 14th century, they kill samurai warriors. So all the refugees during that war, like they lived in just wheat fields, and they built tiny little huts. They tried to stay away from everybody, and they were scavengers. So these 2 women, one was older, one was probably in her like late 50s, and one was in her early 20s. They would kill samurai warriors no matter what side they were on. And they would take their belongings and sell them for food, because everyone was fucking starving. What she does is she takes the mask and she decides to create this character that's this evil demon lady that comes up out of the wheat fields and scares the younger girl, because the younger girl would leave every night to go fuck the guy. So she would be like the barrier, and she made these like robes, and she would throw on this mask, and she would scare the shit out of the younger girl. When you watch the movie, the mask will haunt your fucking dreams. It really does. In the context of the movie, I don't know if it looks goofy to you guys, but in the context of the movie, like how it's used and what ends up happening to the older lady, it becomes more than just somebody putting on a mask to scare somebody. I don't want to give it all away, but music, the imagery of this film is crazy. Yeah, I just highly recommend it. When I saw this movie in my 20s in film school, this mask never left my head. I've had several dreams with this mask. So. Well, thank you, everybody. Happy 2-year anniversary of the pandemic. We hope everyone is just as happy as they were the day it started. And
now we're mostly worried about the outbreak of World War III.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you remember, Ben,
times have gotten much worse. And please check out Captain Cockney Spock's YouTube channel.
You guys.
Thank you, everybody. We drink your cinema.
We do.
Nice.
I drink it up!